Aaron Keener is dead. Faye Lau has turned her back on the division and gone rogue, teaming up with Bardon Schaeffer and the Black Tusk. Following the events of Warlords of New York, we are introduced to a new content format called Seasons. In this video, I'll be summarising what has played out across Seasons 1 to 11.
What's her mission? And can the division survive what comes next?
Before Keener's death, he had organised an attack on Washington, D.C. Rogue agent Jupiter was given the task of carrying this out. Jupiter assembled her team of rogue agents and equipped them with the new Rogue Network smartwatches that Agent Theo Parnell had developed alongside Keener. While on mission, Jupiter would receive a package. Keener had sent her a sample of his new weaponized Eclipse virus. But with Keener now out of the picture, she had it disposed of. To her, this operation was about getting rid of the virus, not spreading something far more dangerous. Jupiter and her rogues have teamed up with the Cleaners for this mission. She informs them of multiple reports of experiments being carried out to weaponize the virus in DC, and makes it very clear that the goal is to eradicate the green poison and anyone who could be spreading it. Following the path of destruction, Division agents would eventually catch up with Jupiter's rogues and take them out one by one. It was discovered that Jupiter was on Roosevelt Island, uncovering a newly developed EMP technology from a cargo plane that had crashed there some time ago. This tech was capable of neutralizing all non-rogue network SHD tech, including the agent's armor. Her plan was to recover all the tech and dispatch it out to rogue agents nationwide, rendering the division completely helpless. By the time division agents caught up with her, the Cleaners had set up a solid foothold on the island and were preparing to use it as a staging point for their mission of cleansing Washington, D.C. of the virus by burning it to the ground. But the agents were too much for them. The Cleaners were pushed back. Even after Jupiter had them utilize the new EMP jammers against them, they fought through, killing the Cleaners, the EMPs, and eventually Jupiter. Rogue Agent Hornet had history with Keener. They served together in the US Army, long before they were recruited by the division. Hornet saw them as brothers and would do anything that was asked of him. During Keener's attack on Lower Manhattan, he gave Hornet some of the Eclipse virus, along with instructions of how to create more. On top of this, he tasked Hornet with going to Washington, D.C., along with 4 other rogue agents, to recruit members to his cause. The outcasts were the most likely solution, as they were currently without a leader and in need of a purpose. But Hornet's rogue agents weren't exactly the most subtle in their movements. Division agents had no problem tracking them down and eliminating them, eventually exposing his location at Tidal Basin. Hornet did his best to organize his new outcast recruits and get his supplies of Eclipse virus moved out of the city. But the agents were pushing through the compound too quickly. Hornet attempted to slow them down by releasing some of the virus around the base. However, it was too late. The agents were able to clear the outcast forces, and then Hornet and his stockpile of Eclipse virus. Black Tusk Specialist Leader Bardon Schaeffer has been tasked with working alongside the recently turned rogue Faye Lau. She has provided him with 4 rogue agents, but he is having his doubts and shares his concerns with Black Tusk leader Natalia Sokolova. But Natalia shakes it off, saying that this is an opportunity for Faye and her rogues to prove their worth, as well as keeping her business partners happy. She orders Schaeffer to handle the responsibility, as it was him who brought Faye to the Black Tusk in the first place. During the operation, Schaeffer continued to receive unreasonable requests from these rogue agents, until he eventually decided it was time to contact Faye Lau. They would end up organizing a meeting on Coney Island to discuss the operation and growing expenses. In the meantime, Schaeffer's rogues are being hunted down by the division, with the assistance of someone or something that refuses to stop and talk, and instead opts to disappear after each encounter. From the outside, the Schaeffer and Faye meeting appeared as a setup to kill Faye, but regardless of what it was intended to be used for, the SHD agents would soon crash the party before anything was able to go down. They would invade Coney Island, rapidly working their way through the Rikers stationed there, and meet face to face with the entity that was responsible for helping with hunting down the rogue agents. This asset, or operative, would be taken down by the agents, but he seemed to be known by Schaeffer and Natalia. In fact, he seemed to be working with them. the agents would turn their attention to Schaeffer. After engaging with some of the most elite BTSU in their ranks, agents were able to catch up with him, and after a short firefight, Schaeffer would become severely wounded. Eleni Kelso would send in a team to retrieve and apprehend him. Agents finally discover intel on Faye Lau's whereabouts. Given her prominence within the agency, her actions in turning her back on the division make her more than just another rogue agent target. For the agents, this is personal. After taking down her team of rogues, they would find out that she is at Camp White Oak with President Ellis. But by the time the agents get there, Faye has assassinated Ellis and is attempting to escape the compound via helicopter. Blaming the division for Ellis's death, she is surrounded by a large contingent of Black Tusk forces. Before she is able to leave, the agents catch up with her and disable her transport. Faye is now forced to engage in a fight against the agents she once worked so closely with. Faye would eventually be killed by the agents, but after her death, they would discover that not everything was what it seemed. Audio logs left by Faye would explain that everything she has been doing is for the greater good of the division and the country. Her plan was to gain trust within the Black Tusk and work her way up through their ranks, to put herself into a position where she could take them apart from the inside. And her first target was President Ellis. She needed everything to look authentic. It needed to appear as if she was just another agent defecting from the division. So for this reason, she couldn't let anyone know what she was doing. On top of this, she was working closely with Bardon Schaeffer, who had lost faith in the direction the Black Tusk was headed. As Natalia's #1 man in the BTSU, he holds a large amount of intel on what Natalia and her partners are planning. But for now, he is still in a coma from his engagement with the division at the end of Season 3. Seasons 5, 6, 7 and 8 are just repeats of Seasons 1 to 4, but not in the same order, which is a little bit weird. The only reason I'm including this section in the video is to explain why the content I'm about to run through jumps from Season 4 to Season 9. When the JTF was assembled in Washington, D.C., Captain Lewis would be placed under the command of Colonel Antoine Ridgway. When Ridgway stopped taking orders from above and started taking matters into his own hands, Lewis was one of the soldiers who would stay loyal to his cause, rebranding themselves as the True Sons. After Ridgway's death at the hands of the division, General Anderson would take the reins. Anderson would eventually have Lewis carry out an operation in DC. They were hunting for something, and have now found it. Lewis and his men head to the Jefferson Trade Center immediately, and this is where the division would catch up with him. Except he is all alone, the last member of his team. Lewis would explain that there is something much larger at play here, and regardless of their differences, they should team up to bring it down. Although they don't necessarily trust him, the agents agree. The division, along with Lewis, get to work taking down the Black Tusk who have taken hold of the site. While in there, Lewis warns the agents that the BTSU are not the biggest threat present on site. There is something far more dangerous, something he calls the Recruiter. Agents eventually take down the Black Tusk forces. The Recruiter, having done nothing but observe from a distance throughout the fight, would vanish shortly after. However, to add to this confusion, the agents would also find out that the Black Tusk soldier who was commanding this operation had an agent watch on him, with Isaac detecting an agent status. The agents pushed Lewis for answers, but he would simply tell them to get in contact with him when they had finally caught up with what was happening around them. This operation also reveals and confirms the cooperation between Natalia Sokolova and Kelvin McManus. McManus turns out to be the Secretary of Homeland Security, and that he is his own personal unit of covert special operatives, known to us as the Hunters. Being Homeland Security, McManus is not only aware of the SHD from its very early days, but is somewhat responsible for them. General Anderson has come to the realization that the True Sons are no match for the division or the Black Tusk, so has reached out to Natalia Sokolova in an attempt to team up. Natalia sends out a team of Black Tusk operatives to assess and work out the viability of this potential new alliance. However, in the background, Manny and Captain Lewis have been communicating. Prior to more recent events, Manny and Lewis worked alongside each other in the JTF, all the way up until the day that Colonel Antoine Ridgway turned his back on the government. after losing faith in their ability to do what was needed to make it through the pandemic. The JTF around Ridgeway were faced with a choice: to fall back to other JTF units, or to join his new band, calling themselves the True Sons, in turn becoming an enemy of the country. Manny fell back, keeping to his oath, while Lewis sided with Ridgeway, agreeing that things needed to be done differently if the country was going to survive. However, now, after Ridgeway's death, although Lewis still feels that what he did was justified, under Anderson, things have now changed, and he wants to help put a stop to Anderson and Natalia's plans. He's managed to find at least 100 True Sons so far who are willing to follow him and team up with the division to take Anderson down. But unfortunately for him, Anderson and Natalia are onto him and have been watching for a while. Before he is able to move out, Captain Lewis and the majority of his True Sons were rounded up and either locked away or executed. After the division had finished dealing with Natalia's Black Tusk operatives, who were sent in to assess the True Sons, agents would discover General Anderson's location at the Pentco Fairview power plant, where he had a meeting planned with Natalia Sokolova. Agents would make their way to the reactor. There, Lewis had been locked away in an office, and the compound is on fire. Division agents were successful in locating the valves and reactivating the sprinklers, rescuing Lewis in the process. But with little warning, Lewis took off in pursuit of Anderson. However, Anderson had already made it to the docks, where Natalia had arrived with a fleet of hovercrafts. The agents would meet up with Lewis in the parking lot, where a helicopter was waiting to extract them. After the events at the Pentco Fairview power plant, the Black Tusk and True Sons have successfully rebuilt their alliance and are now working together to destroy the division once and for all. Stovepipe and his team have been tasked with gathering intel on the White House. This would lead to them finding out that Bardon Schaeffer is still alive. On top of this, Natalia Sokolova appears to have her own plans in place that she is keeping from her team. It has something to do with radiation and dirty bombs. While she is denying it, her intentions are clear. It would eventually be discovered that Stovepipe has been building a base with mortar launchers on Coney Island. Agents realize that this could be her plan, to launch a dirty bomb attack on New York City, so they quickly make their way over there to put a stop to it. However, when the agents arrived on the island, it was quiet. They would discover that Stovepipe was dead, and that the whole operation was a trap. From a nearby Black Tusk hovercraft, a swarm of drones, quadcopters, mini-tanks, automated turrets, and EMPs would be launched towards the agent's location. Fighting through and clearing the island, Torres was able to make it to their location and extract them. However, this is when the true depth of the situation really came to light. It turns out that Natalia had figured out that the division were listening into their comms and decided to use this to lure the agents away while she organized an attack on the White House. So while the agents were distracted and away on Coney Island, looking for something that didn't exist, the Black Tusk rolled in. Their main target, Bardon Schaeffer. The SHD network has once again been taken down, but thanks to a mobile SHD server, agents are still able to communicate and use skills. Fighting through the Black Tusk, they meet up with Kelso. Most of the attackers have either left or been killed. JTF bodies line the floor, and this includes Captain Lewis, who sacrificed himself so that Manny and Schaeffer could make it to a panic room. They know that Schaeffer was the target, and while the Black Tusk were unsuccessful in taking him, they still managed to take the perfusion bioreactor and several key personnel. The next step is to get the White House defenses back online. As long as they have the mobile SHD server, while limited in range, their skills and comms are working. But they also need to figure out whether this SHD network blackout is just local or is in fact a global shutdown. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the intention was to provide a concise summary of the story of all seasons up until now. With Year 5 almost here, I wanted a place I could point people towards if they were wanting a quick recap. I had actually hoped that I could make this a little shorter, but when attempting to do so, I felt as though too much of the important information was being lost. But hopefully this answered the question of what story did I miss in the seasons that I often see being asked. The full version of this video will be out in a few days. This one will be more for the die-hard fans, as it will be an edited compilation of all full-length videos, and will sit somewhere between 4 and 5 hours long. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and Extremis Malus, Extrema Remedia.